This too shall pass. It's a decided difference.
A Decided Difference, the podcast devoted to your success and happiness. You choose the change you want. A Decided Difference will help you achieve it. Now here's your host, Lou Ann Clark.
It seems that everywhere I have gone this week, people have been complaining about the weather, and I can't say I blame them. Winter has kept its cold grip tightly on us in western Kentucky. Temperatures have dropped into the single digits on 2 days, and that just about drove us to the brink of insanity. The days are getting longer, and we are all so ready for spring we can hardly stand it. It's still more than a week until the official beginning of spring, and even when it comes, it won't be good and warm yet. But we have just simply lost our patience with this winter thing. I met a man last week who had just moved here from Wisconsin, and he was quite disappointed that it was still so freaking cold here, although he did say he didn't miss the 2 feet of snow he had left behind. There is nothing unusual about this situation. It's like this every year. Granted, we don't always get single digits in March, but March is a cold month here. I don't know why everyone is so crabby about it. But full disclosure, I'm saying that knowing full well that by the day this podcast is released, I'll be on the Gulf Coast of Florida, where the temperatures are forecast to be in the upper 70s. I try to go to Florida every year in February or March because I know I will have lost patience with the cold by then, and I will need a break. When you have been in the middle of a challenging situation for a long time, it's easy to lose perspective. Any stressful situation you may face can create that loss of perspective. There's a mantra that I like to repeat to myself when I'm in the midst of an unpleasant stretch. It's simple but effective, and you have heard it before. It is, "This too shall pass." When you really think about it, you realize everything is temporary. Change is relentless, whether we like it or not. We do get one choice, and that is to decide how we will handle change. Your perspective on change is up to you. If you're impatient for a change to happen and you dwell on the thought that it isn't happening fast enough to suit you, you can make yourself feel disappointed and frustrated. I admit I've been impatient for my Florida trip to begin because I'm just as cold as everybody else around here. I made the decision to see the waiting as a pleasant period of anticipation. I got a countdown app for my phone, and I checked it frequently to see evidence that I was getting closer to warm sunshine. I planned and I packed most of my things for the trip more than a week ahead of time. This behavior was shocking. Shocking, I say, to the people who know how I usually pack for trips. And it is proof that change is, in fact, possible. You can decide to take a different perspective about waiting for change in your situation too. You can decide to dwell on the negatives, or you can remind yourself that this too shall pass. If you are a parent and your toddlers are driving you crazy, remind yourself, this too shall pass. When your teenagers are driving you crazy, remind yourself, this too shall pass. I know it's hard to remember the toddler years when your kids are teenagers, but there was a time when you were concerned about whether they would ever learn to dress themselves or speak in complete sentences. Someday they will be adults. When you think you can't take one more day on your job, or when you can't listen to your coworker whine one more time, remind yourself, this is temporary. At the end of your workday, you will get to leave, and so will your whiny coworker. You will be a great deal happier if you can leave the unpleasantness at work because you decided to choose a happier mindset when you're at home. I know this isn't easy. When the habits of that maddening man or that exasperating woman that you married are driving you up the wall, you might not even be able to remember why you thought it was a good idea to marry that person. When you're exhausted from taking care of your elderly relative who can't function alone anymore, or when you're drained from taking care of a loved one who is ill, remember, this situation is temporary. This too shall pass. When you are in the acute stage of disappointment, or the intensity of fresh grief, or you have a broken heart, you want change more than ever. You want the way you feel to change. You want relief. You want comfort. But at times like these, consolation can be hard to come by. No matter how deep the disappointment, how wrenching the grief, or how painful the heartbreak, you know that pain diminishes with time. Human beings have an astonishing capacity to adapt to changes in their circumstances, even when those circumstances seem impossible to accept at first. I'm not saying you'll get completely over it. You might not, especially if the experience has left a deep scar. As a friend of mine so wisely says, you don't get over the death of someone you love. You learn to live with the loss. Whenever something negative or difficult happens, you also learn from it if you choose to. You may find that you're more resilient, more able to cope, more capable of taking the long view after living through some challenging times. You learn that you can handle it. You find that you had more strength than you thought, or you discover that you had more people to support you than you expected. Or maybe you flounder through it, crying and screaming and flailing until whatever it is passes. However you do it, you get through it, and you keep going forward, because forward is the only direction you can go. When you are in the midst of grief or fear or heartbreak, this too shall pass. And when you are deliriously happy, that too shall pass. One of the most interesting psychological studies of the past 50 years pointed out that after a year had passed after winning the lottery, most people returned to about the same happiness level they had before the big win. And the same study found that a year after becoming a paraplegic through an accident, most people returned to about the same happiness level they had before the accident happened. Being a human alive on planet Earth means change. The emotions you feel today will not always be with you, not in their same forms and intensities. Even when you think there is no way you can stand the pain, you can, because it won't always be this way. Please be patient with yourself. Please be compassionate toward yourself. Emotionally mature people know that nothing is forever. When joy comes, they enjoy it, and when sadness comes, they bear it. And most of all, they remember this: every emotion passes. I just used the phrase emotionally mature to describe a certain mindset and type of behavior, and many people develop these as they get older, but not everyone becomes emotionally mature. You knew that, right? Experiencing challenges and learning that you can live through them helps a lot. You find that you can still thrive and be happy in spite of the bad things that have happened to you. One of my goals in doing this weekly podcast is to help you change your thinking about how you should feel. You get to choose. And of course, you've always had the choice. But I shudder to think how many years I didn't make my choices consciously. Even after all these years of deliberately choosing how to think, my feelings can sometimes overwhelm me. But I know I have the option to change the emotions I am creating by changing the thoughts I am creating. As I was trying to get this podcast episode put together, I started to feel pretty overwhelmed. The week before a vacation always seems to be busier than usual, and I'm also preparing to put my house on the market and make a big move. This will be another downsize for me, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of decisions to be made, from the major to the trivial. Earlier this week, when I was thinking of all the things I need to get done in the next month, I felt myself getting anxious. So much to do. How will I ever get it all done? What if I can't get it all done? What if I fail to handle this? What if something falls through the cracks? Do you remember that using the words "what if" at the beginning of a sentence is a great way to create anxiety for yourself? When I decided to focus on one thing at a time and chose to remember I'll only be away for a few days, I realized I could get the urgent and important things done. And the others? Well, they'll be waiting for me when I get back. I still needed to work hard, but I can do that. And now I can allow myself to enjoy my time at the beach. The mad rush to get there was unpleasant. Being there, I hope, will be very pleasant. And I know that both are temporary. As surely as spring is on its way, whatever you are struggling with today will pass. If you are in the midst of an emotional winter, please take care of yourself the best that you can. Whatever you are savoring today also will pass. Enjoy the emotional summer while it lasts, and the good memories you create can help carry you through the next emotional winter. Remember, although it too is temporary, spring always comes around again. As always, I invite you to get in touch if you have questions or feedback for me. You can send me an email at luann@luannclark.com, use the contact form at decideddifference.com, or send a message to me through A Decided Difference on Facebook. And hey, you've subscribed to this podcast, right? And you're telling your friends about it? Thanks. I hope you have a great week, and remember, the world doesn't change. You do.